All right,
Hey,
we're
well,
ready.
welcome everybody to our session on Collaborate. Um, so, there's a couple of things we can collaborate. I quickly review kind of the instructional technology part behind Blackboard Collaborate, and that's similar to probably what you saw in the video. Kind of review that. We can go forward to maybe the instructional design considerations you might want to use before you go into kind of a live virtual classroom setting. So I'm going to share my screen so everybody can see. I'm going to turn off my camera right now. So let's go over the technology part. In your course, I'm in the DEIR course right now, and I have a Collaborate link set up here, Sandbox. So in my Sandbox, I also have a Collaborate link. And so a Collaborate shortcut to get to the Collaborate page. I think in my start here, I've also got a Collaborate page. Let me go to Classroom. Well, I don't. But here's how you put one in your class. Collaborate link somewhere. Just go to Tools, go to More Tools, and go to Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. And you can put whatever description you want to, submit. And this gives you a link to the page, which you see right. The students can then see this, come in there, click that link, and it takes them to their Blackboard Collaborate Ultra page, which has all the sessions you have created. Now, I also added a link here as a shortcut. So like, let's say they were in the classroom, link here, and it would also take them to the page, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. And if you'd like a link like that, and here's my discussion board, but if you'd like a link, all you do is you go to the plus sign, and because Collaborate is a tool, you click Tool Link, you type in whatever name you want, because that's the name there, and then under Type, you just select the tool that you want that name to link to, and in this case, it was Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, and then I hit Submit. For discussion board, it was the same thing. Tool link, I put in DB there, and I selected discussion board. So the students could click there and immediately go to the discussion board. Now, on this page, there's a couple of things we could kind of go over. The default is it's available all semester long, and it's also unlocked. So students or instructors could go in there any. So if you just wanted to meet somebody quickly, be like, meet me in the course room, they could navigate to the Collaborate link, click on the course room, you do the same. You be in, nothing to set up. It's automatically set up by Blackboard. If you like, you can also lock it. Some instructors unlocked because they would set up a meeting with students, and students would go to the course room instead of the other room. So in that case, you can come over here and you can lock the course room. Now, if you want to create a session, all you have to do is create. You would name it here. I'll just call this test. Guest access is not important meeting you. Your students are not considered guests. They're considered attendees, so we'll get to that later. But in case you needed to like have an orientation with, or you wanted to set up a virtual office hour session for just any students in any of your classes, you could send out a guest access link to your virtual office hour in your Sandbox. But we'll leave that off. You can click the start and end times to set up correctly. Now, one thing I'll point out is these can be open as long as you want to. So it's quite possible to set up a semester. As you see, I have a group session. If I had a group of kids named the Avengers, and I set up a session for them all semester, and they could just go in any time and meet with each other. I don't even have to be present for that. So start and end time's up to you. You can set up repeating sessions like we have in DEIR. Let's see. On session settings here, so your students are considered attendees. So you can set up your default attendee role. A participant, what it says, they can participate, but they can't really share their screen with you. If you want them to share the screen with you, change them to moderator. Actually, the role of presenter, so you can actually modify people's mics in a live presentation, things like that. Don't give them that, but you can make them a moderator, and they can kind of share their screen with you if they needed to. One other thing you may want to do, if you ever want students, you want to record your session in case a student misses it, and you download the recording, you want to click here. You can anonymize chat messages if you participant permissions. This is if they get to share audio, share video, you can control that. Usually do much. The only thing I do usually when I set up a session is I set up my start and end times right, and I click allow recording downloads, and I would change them to moderator status. So on a routine basis, it's only 3 things I do. You set up the right time, assign them as moderator, and allow recording downloads. But we're going through these just to kind of let you know what they are. So you can change their permissions if they get to share audio, video, post chat messages, draw on whiteboard and files. By default, attendees can join the session using a telephone. And that's great for students who are having technical issues with their mic at home. They can just call in.
Hey, Mark.
This allows you to restrict private chats. Yeah.
Are you still sharing your screen?
Somebody say something?
Are you still sharing your screen?
I'm supposed to. Yeah, but let me try it again. I think my connection wasn't good enough to share the application. Let me try it again.
Would it help if everybody turned off?
For some reason that my internet has. So yeah, I got kicked out of the share screen thing, and I'm back. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I guess that's a virtue of having a poor internet connection, and I don't know why, but poor internet connection for the past 2 days here. Maybe the storm knocked out something that was important out there. So I'm going to cancel this. Go back. I'm going to create this. I'll quickly go over kind of the same thing I did. So here's the session I just created. And the thing I was saying was, actually, there's only a few things. I don't modify all these settings. I go in, I give it a name, because you have to give it a name. We named it test. Times are set up correctly. Start and end time. And then I go over to session settings. I like the students to be moderators so they can share their screen with me if they and I need to see something. And I click allow recording downloads. You can always record the session, but if you don't have this checked, recording downloads, they won't be able to download your session. They'll just be able to view it through a Collaborate. Participant permissions, I usually don't mess with these, but you can change whether your participants share audio, video, draw on whiteboards. And this allows them to call on the phone if they have microphone troubles. Recording. Yeah, I have not actually even used this, so I'm not even sure how this works yet. I'll have to look into that. So after you save, all the student has to do, like say in your course, they navigate to wherever you put that Blackboard link. They're going to open their Collaborate page, and they'll see this. And like say you said, hey, come to this session I call test. Click on it, and they would click join session. So there's no links to send them or anything like that. Now what I was mentioning, Like say you wanted to do a virtual office hour and you wanted to open for all your classes, like that, you might want to set up a session in your sandbox, because students can only get into the Collaborate sessions in their own courses. But if you set one in your sandbox, in this case, click on guest access. I like to change them to moderators, save, and now you have a guest link. Now you have this link, you copy it here, an announcement or to emails to your students and say, hey, here's the link for my virtual office hour session. I'll be here this date from this time to join. And this is where you get the guest link. And could simply have recurring sessions for virtual office hour, each one, or just meet in the course room if you like. But the course room also access, and you just give them the link to the course room. So that's kind of the instructional technology of Collaborate Ultra. And if I go into a session while we're sharing the screen, some of the basics, you'll see we have a pancake icon in the upper left here, and that opens this panel. This is where you start recording or stop recording, report an issue, privacy policy. Usually the only thing I use in this panel is the start and stop recording here and leave session panel here. If you see the purple tab in the lower right, this opens the Collaborate panel. And there's 4 icons along the bottom. It allows you to see what's going on in chat. You click here and you get to see who the attendees are. And also you can see mine that I have poor internet for some reason, so that's issues. You can click share and you can click my settings. So here's where session settings, in case you wanted to change your participant permissions, like I don't want them to share their video or audio right now. If you wanted to turn it off globally, this is where you do it. It would shut it off for everybody, for all the participants. Now, if you just had certain times a student leaves his microphone on and you hear a lot of feedback or the radio, if you need to mute, you can just go up here to the 3 dots. And let's see. No. Oh, no, I don't know. Send a chat, moderator center. Well, I can't mute it. But let me see if I can mute all. Yeah, that works. And everybody hear me?
Yes. Yeah. We lost your screen again.
Turn your mic back on. Huh?
We lost your screen again.
Oh, you lost my screen again? All right.
Mark, I think you're muted.
Oh, there we go. Now can you hear me? Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, this is the day of technical issues. Call my internet provider, see what's going on. But hopefully you should be able to see my screen right now. One thing the chat window. I lost all my chat messages because I had to reload the session. But it's good to have kind of a producer that's kind of like monitoring the chat for you. If you're trying to talk, you're going to miss a lot of messages, especially if it's a busy room, there's a lot of people. So you might have somebody monitoring that, and then they can give you a shout out on the mic. They had this question, and then you can respond to that. And you can easily pick a student to be that kind of moderator as well, to kind of monitor the chat room for you. Yeah, big events, when you have a large groups of people, you often want two presenters, or a presenter and then a moderator, somebody to present while somebody monitors your chat room, takes care of issues, things like that. The attendees, we already showed you how you can mute people. That's definitely comes in useful sometimes. Sometimes people have radio in the background, they've walked away, so they don't even know like what's going on in the session and it's too loud. Nope, it looks like I lost my screen again. I'm back. Well, luckily I don't need too much of screen sharing right now to kind of explain what I'm going to. What you can actually do, so on the chat, I was talking about that. If everybody would open their Collaborate panel tab we just showed you, and click the Share Content icon on the bottom, it's that little arrow. So here, you actually see it on your screen. But it allows you to share a blank whiteboard, share an app, entire screen for the students, to share a camera if you have a camera connected. And this might be, this is after this, share files. If you need to send files to students, you can actually send PowerPoints or PDF pictures straight through the share files thing. And this might be very useful in a situation that we're, like say you're trying to share your screen and you're trying to go through a PowerPoint and the internet's not cooperating, and it's like, well, we can't see your screen, instructor. You might files, send the PowerPoint to everyone. They can open the PowerPoint on their own screen while you talk them through it. It's kind of the same way you would do on your screen. So today we have a good example of why you might want to share files. Polling so you can ask the student a question, multiple choice or yes, no choices. And this is great for a lot of reasons. Breakout groups. This is also where you can break everybody out into breakout groups. So Collaborate is, I would call it a very simple interaction tool as far as web conferencing. I think it's simpler than WebEx, which is good. Simplicity, but all it is, they're tools. It's an interaction tool. So now, if anybody had any questions about the specifics of how to click here to set up a session, we kind of talk about instructional design a little bit. Like what goes behind the decision makings of why you would want to use these tools. And so I said, Blackboard Collaborate is an interaction tool. It's a piece of instructional technology. It's good for one-on-one meetings, virtual like drop-ins. It's good for a virtual classroom experience, and it's good for presenting delivering a presentation to a large audience. So interaction tools. You can use it to record things, but sometimes if all you needed to do was record something, there's better software out there and snag it and release it asynchronous if all it is a big presentation. But here's other thoughts that you might, thoughts about prepping students for the virtual classroom. And I'm going to share a blank whiteboard. Can everybody see the whiteboard?
Yes.
So hopefully the advantage of the whiteboard is it's actually going to send less data over the internet than if I'm sharing my screen. Keep kicking me out. So I'll go over a few things with you here. So So one thing you want to ask a student, do they have a microphone? You might run into this with students, and this is kind of prep work you want to do for students before you even, like when you begin the class, before you go into a session. Do you have a microphone? If anybody has a laptop, then it's a built-in camera and microphone in every laptop. But some students are still using desktop computers, so they're awful surprised when they try and log on your Collaborate session, their camera or microphone to work, but they never had one. They just have speakers. So you want to make sure they have a mic. If you want them to have a camera, ask them about that. Thing is, do they know how to check current device in Windows or their operating system? And so current device could be your input audio device or your output audio device. And let's see. Share my screen, see if it'll share for a short while without flaking out. So I'm using Windows right now. Windows. If you click the little Windows icon and go to the cog and go to and then sound, you get to choose your output device here and choose your input device. Often when people have audio or it's because in a modern day world we have lots of devices plugged in, so they might have multiple microphones and they might have multiple outputs, so they need to and make sure that they're using the right one. So that's often an issue, is the wrong device is selected there. Now, to change your output device is you click your speaker icon, and right above this volume bar you can actually see all the output devices you're selected. And those are two very common troubleshooting things you're going to run into with students. Stop sharing that. Oh, and it erases your whiteboard. So we talked about making sure they have a microphone, make sure they have a camera. Do they know how to check their output and audio devices? And here's another important one you probably want to tell your students. To prep for the session, to bring headphones or earbuds, or make sure they have those available. What happens if you don't listen to these web sessions on earbuds or headphones is that the sound coming out of the speaker goes back in the microphone, which then comes back out of the speaker, then back into the microphone, and continues this loop. Causes some harsh feedback. So you always want to tell your students to always use earbuds or headphones when they're doing this. Now it is a monitor that has echo canceling software, and in that case I can get away without using the earbuds or headphones because the microphone is enough to do the echo cancellation. But don't count on that, so I would tell everybody to have earbuds or headphones. Make sure on their device. And you might want to go over like virtual classroom etiquette. Close your email, and I'm notorious. I'm email dings all the time when I'm talking. But you want to have them close their email, silence their cell phone. Doesn't come up unless you maybe have an older student that's calling in. Most people don't call in, but if somebody did call into the session, it's very important to hold if they need to do something else. Because if they do that, that's when it just plays that hold music to everyone in the room. But that's a little worry today because most people will be joining on computers. Usually I use the phone line as a last resort if somebody. Another thing, talking about a little bit of design and planning, I've actually taken a course on instructional design classroom session. And I can tell you there's like a 12-step process kind of design this maybe hour to 2 hour session. But I would say that's the plan for optimal. That's the plan if you have a big government contract or if you're at Stanford and you have a lot of time. Don't have that kind of time to go through the 12-step process to optimize our virtual classroom session. But what we don't plan, so I just do nothing. So it's like, what a little bit of planning design can you do and go forward with? And I would say you at least want to do what I call back of the napkin planning, which is, just scribble down some notes, scribble down kind of an outline of what you're going to do. So there's, you have to make the decision how much time you have to plan on the real world. I like to read lots of research and lots of methods and methodologies, but they're usually geared toward optimal. And in the real world, we're always making trade-offs based on our time and the resources we have available. So you got to ask yourself, what time do you have? The other thing I would ask is, what content am I trying to get across to the students? And then I would ask what type of content it is. What type of content you're trying to get through to your students might affect what methods you use. So we talked about tools. Like Blackboard Collaborate is like you can share your screen with someone, you can share a whiteboard, you have a chat feature. Those are all tools. But a method is an instructional method you're going to use to communicate that content. So a commonly used instructional method if you're delivering technical content is a demonstration. You want to somehow demonstrate something to a student, and then you would probably assess them like a practice exercise. If you were doing content, like the way you would present that is behavior modeling. Maybe you would behavior model them a skit between two students, or maybe it's an interview process, some kind of interpersonal interaction. And a way you can apply that's through a role play. You can kind of then apply, after you did a behavior modeling exercise, let them role play with each other to give them practice doing something that's an interpersonal content. And the other content. So if it's conceptual content, many ways to present that. Brainstorming is one. A way to assess is case studies, but there's lots of methods to choose from. But kind of want to look at the content and then say what's the best method to deliver this. And I'll say discussions usually work for all types of content, whether it's technical, interpersonal, conceptual. Facilitating works, and quizzes are pretty go across the spectrum as well. They work with all types of content to give a quiz. And we could probably have a whole nother session on different instructional presentation methods and application methods. But one thing I'd probably point out is you might want to think outside the box in the fact that so sometimes when you're teaching someone, we present, then we give them a chance to apply the material, and then we give them feedback in the form of grades or communications back to them about how they did. Your method might be like I present in class, now you have all these assignments to apply it, and these tests I use to assess you so I can give you grades and your feedback how you did. You could actually you might be using this virtual classroom sessions just to present material, but you don't have to. Actually incorporate application and feedback into your virtual classroom session. So there's different, and there's different ways to present material. There's the brainstorming method where you could ask students, instead of you lecturing on a certain topic, you tell the students to keep telling you everything they know, and you might type that on the whiteboard until you kind of capture about the subject, and then you just start filling in the blanks. You'd be like, well, you missed this, and you need to think about this, and it's a good way to kind of see where the class know and where do you need to fill in the blanks. Different ways to present the material besides just lecturing there. You could also incorporate some type of game. So in I showed you a breakout room. We had polls in breakout rooms. So polls are really good to kind of assess the class and see. And you can also, use polls for different things. Game, kind of incorporate it in there. Breakout groups are useful, especially if you have a large class. Sometimes, you can encourage. Some people don't want to talk when it's like 25 people in your virtual classroom session, but if they were in groups of 3, they might actually have a discussion with each other. You could go into breakout rooms, they could have that discussion, and then you'd get back together as a class, and depending on the exercise rooms, they might share like what they talked about or an analysis, and they could share with all the different groups that are there, and maybe each group would have a spokesperson what they did there. But that's just a smattering. There's lots of methods, but I just want to say we can kind of think out of the box. We don't have to do just present, kind of incorporate things. So I'll tell you a trick. Like anybody ever been in a lot of corporate training sessions where you ever had to be in a day, or there was like a whole week of training you had to go to? Those types of people love those little flip pad exercises. And one thing about the flip pads, I asked somebody one time, like, why there were so many, and they said it's because people get too settled. You want them to get out of their seat and go do something just to kind of keep the blood flowing, and things like that. So that's also how I kind of think about these virtual classroom sessions. And I can kind of zone out in a webinar and not remember anything. So if you could kind of chunk your virtual classroom into, like, I'm going to talk for 5 minutes, but now let's do something. Let's have this exercise that we can do, or analyze it. Every 5 or 10 minutes, try and give them something to do to keep them engaged. Otherwise, it's very easy in a webinar session where you're just listening. So a couple things I would keep in mind. So one about that design, like, I'm sure you don't have time for like some 12-step plan to design your hour of training, but think about it will take a little bit of time to develop a session. Time for? Well, one is just planning the session. You need probably some thinking time. I'm going to sit down on my planned session I'm going to do with these students. Training or post-session work you want them to do. You might want to, even if you don't have time, give them a total when they get there. You might just want to give them a preview of the topics you're going to cover. That helps, even if it's just a short list, a preview of the topics you're going to. Session work helps because it's easy to forget after these sessions. So distributed learning says the more we can kind of distribute the learning over time. So say like, oh, I'm going to give you this post-session work to do on the same material, but it's like half a week later, 2 days later. But you give them a later date, go do this post-session work to help imprint this thing. The important thing here, I would like have at least a 2 or 3 day delay so they get more practice kind of recalling the information. Keep in mind that you're might need to provide technical instructions to your students, especially at the beginning of each semester. We have people that don't know how to log in, and then so that's what you do before kind of your session. During your session, give yourself time for an opening and housekeeping. And I mean by that, opening is like welcome everybody, tell them what you're going to do. Okay, this is the time to shut off your email, silence your cell phones, please. Then you kind of deliver what you got to deliver. Then you want, if you're not just presenting, you probably want to assess their understanding. Like say we did this exercise and we did. You want to give yourself enough time. That's not the end of it. That maybe you guys get back and have a debrief about it. That you have some time to assess the understanding them to get out of these exercises that we did, and then give yourself time to kind of close the session. And I call it a call to action. Expect them to do and say, hey, I'll release it in 2 days, and you can get this done. So you close the session and have some time for Q&A. After your session, give yourself some time to be like, I want to reflect on what went well and what didn't go well during my virtual classroom session. reflection is probably the number one thing that's going to help you kind of improve as you go. So sometimes keep doing the same bad habits, but if we reflect on things, we can identify what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, where we can improve things, and we make the next session even better. But as I said, we could probably give a whole nother session on instructional methods and ideas, besides just kind of the instructional technology of how to use the tool. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. About either kind of the design part or the instructional technology of how we make the tech tool work.
I want to add a comment, if I may, Mark.
Yeah.
So one of the issues that instructors have been having this semester that we've been getting a lot of questions about is students not attending the Collaborate sessions, because we can't make them required. All of our online classes have to be asynchronous. We can't require them to sit in on a synchronous session. And so the question comes up, what do you do to get students there live? Because it is more fulfilling's not the word that I'm looking for, but they get more out of it if they attend live, can ask questions, can see other students. You know, they kind of get that presence bit out of it if they're there live. And so even though you can't require them to attend it live, you can make it harder on them to not attend. So for instance, require that they watch the recording and take a quiz over it if they don't attend live, or assign some other additional assignment if they don't attend live. And then also doing fun things within the presentation, or giving extra credit for them sitting in a breakout room during the presentation, or something to make them want to be there, in addition to just having sort of a negative consequence if they're not there. Okay, that was
So there are things that we can go into, like what increases student motivation. Like we know if you had a daily session, students tend to be more motivated than when it's a weekly session. There's also less forgetting. You have to do more review if it's only like a weekly session. Also, there's other things like an instructional method that you actually can make the session, I think, more fun for the students is you expression type exercises where they get to create things, or they get to work with other students to come up with things. Students do thirst for students, especially at a time like this. But what happens is if they logged on to your first virtual classroom session and all it was you just talking for an hour, not as motivated as if it was a session they felt like they had a little bit of fun in there. So hopefully you could probably put a bit more work with your other students, and give them some time to like maybe tell everybody to log in 50 minutes early for a classroom chat that's just students before the actual official class actually starts, to give them that usual interaction that they would have anyway. Those are all ideas for, like, you know, just make it fun, make it engaging for them while they're there. But you also have the problem of how do you get them there in the first place? And we've always, how do you get somebody there if it's not part of their grade and you're kind of forcing them to be there? And it's a challenge without an easy solution. In a perfect world, maybe we would have a class coded as hybrid, but we do expect you to log in at this time and you have to be there. But as long as it's optional, yeah, we are going to have the challenge of getting participation. And I think Cameron's got the great ideas about. She had several suggestions that you could try and make it benefit them, maybe extra points, or the negative. Watch a recording and take a quiz if you didn't show up. So those are very helpful, like outside the session, to encourage and motivate it.
And my daughter, who's in college, her favorite way of getting her, that her professors used to get people to attend was different theme days. One was bring your pet to the session day, and it didn't have to be an actual animal. It could be anything that you wanted to call a pet, or wear your favorite hat day, or something goofy that they wanted to see what the other students were doing.
Yeah, I'll tell you a good exercise to do at the beginning of the semester is push students to work. Ask them, like, hey, work, you be interested in them? And let them give you ideas of different themes you could do and different ideas that they would follow through on. Because that's excitement they're bringing into the course, great. Exploit that, use that, and they'll help propel others. See that one thing I think students complain about during this quarantine time is that they took for granted some of the social interaction they had, even about working with the academic content. But you would get to class before the session started. You got to talk with your fellow students, and I think they're missing a lot of that. And so one idea is like, well, how do we put more of that in there? And sometimes we're always thinking about academic content, but you can kind of think about, okay, size for them. Maybe there's nothing wrong with breaking it up, and if I can take 5 minutes away from my educational content every now and then to just have a fun social exercise for them, if that motivates them, engages them, encourages them to come, then they're going to be there to listen to your academic material as well. So if anybody's got any questions, feel free with questions. If you got ideas or comments, jump in with those too.
Charles posted a question. Why would you make a student a moderator instead of a presenter? What are the differences there?
Now, I would have to look into that. So I know moderators can, what I use it for is I let my students be moderators so they can share their screen. I'm not sure how much control they have. I can tell you maybe what it is. I went into the attendee list and I was trying to mute individuals. I couldn't. I wonder if the presenter can mute individuals.
Moderators can moderate the attendees, but they can't mute other moderators. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
So if everyone's a moderator, then nobody can
Like
mute
I'm trying right
anybody
now
else.
to yeah. But so usually the default attendee role is participant, and a participant would not be able to share the screen. So if you didn't change it from, be able to share their screen. But I mean, you could just keep everybody on participant. That would just save you a step creating the sessions, because you can always move them up to moderator access during the session if you wanted them to.
Brian's question is, how do you ensure that students participate equally in a teamwork project scenario?
Well, I just got ensure how to students participate. Cameron, what was the part after that?
Couldn't hear which part you heard, but the full question was, how do you ensure that students participate equally in a teamwork project scenario? And Brian, I'm not sure whether you're asking about when you split students up into group rooms and collaborate, or whether you're assigning teams use of Collaborate for part of their project. Did you have anything specific in mind there?
Yeah, Cameron, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the former. My daughter's had that. She's taking online classes in Atlanta, and she said, it's been the same since I've been in high school, and all 4 years at college. It just doesn't matter. Uh, Someone's going to take the lead, and someone is going to, hitch their wagon to their star. It just seems to fall out that way. So, so it is the former. How do you address that? Or if you've got enough experience after you've done virtual instruction for a while, can you kind of glom onto the fact it looks as if student A is really kind of pulling the lion's share? And I'll mute and listen in. Okay.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd say, Brian, I would change the word to how do you encourage students to do teamwork equally? Because if I figured out how to ensure it, I'd win a Nobel Prize. That's I don't think we'll ever that they do it equally, but there's ways to encourage it to happen equally. I've seen different things where people have their peers kind of part of your grade is your peers are going to review you and on the work you've done. The other thing is you can have group projects where they turn in deliverables and they kind of attribute like how each person did on the deliverable. There's other times I've seen people have group work, but you get evaluated by your peers repeatedly, and then in the next group, the people that kind of they kind of put the slackers in the same groups with you. So it kind of like the best ones kind of kept connecting to the better teams, and the worst ones kind of went to the worst teams. There's different methods to encourage. Yeah, I turned off because I'm having internet issues, so I'm hoping my audio will come through better if my video is off. Yeah, I actually, teamwork, teamwork, I think is good if you have the time. We all have to like, how much time do you have? So some people use discussions to have that student-to-student interaction versus teamwork. Time to kind of grade the teamwork and manage it. It's more work, I think, on the instructor and the students, but there is a lot of value to it. And I would say a very thing pertinent to live in, we're learning to work with a team online remotely is a great skill. It's only going to be it's being going to be used in the future. We're going to have more and more online and remote workers, and we're going to have to know how to work with teams that may not be area.
All right, well,
I know of several software companies. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Finish up, Mark, and then I was just going to say we're a little bit over time. So if there's a last question that we could get to, and then we need to wrap it up.
Well, yeah, I'll open it up for questions. Anybody got any questions?
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And we'll see you next week, if not before.